Committee on Ways and Means and Finance. So this afternoon, we'll hear from the 4 county mayors who will be presenting to both money committees. So first up is Sitting County of Honolulu, Mayor Rick Langiardi. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Aloha. Thank you. Look, I appreciate the opportunity to appear before this joint committee meeting by the Committee of Ways and Means and the Committee on Finance to provide a legislative update. Senator Donovan Dela Cruz, Senator Sharon Morawaki, and other members of the Committee on Ways and Means, Representative Kyle Yamashita, Representative Lisa Kitagawa, and other members of the Committee on Finance. I provided an e-copy at your request of a very brief slide deck that we have on Honolulu's legislative initiatives this year. I want to start by acknowledging, however, that 2024 represents many opportunities for the City and County of Honolulu to make significant progress on our priority issues, including, first and foremost, affordable housing and transit-oriented development. That said, we're dependent in part upon the legislative action of this body this year, and I would be remiss if I didn't express our sincere appreciation for the support and collaboration we've received from the Money and Housing and Vice Chairs. We are very mindful of the horrendous fires on Maui. I've had the chance today to spend some time with Mayor Bisson again, talking about just the events of this past weekend. And we know full well the fiscal challenges ahead for both the County of Maui and our state. We are currently in our fiscal year 25 budget preparations, which promises to be, since I've been in office, our most challenging fiscal year since 21, with collective bargaining initiatives and increases, a full year of rail operations, and a demand for expanded core services and hazard pay for essential city workers who serve with distinction during the COVID-19 pandemic. As for specific legislation before this body, I know that each mayor will speak to their own legislative initiatives. We have 2. Can we go to slide 2, please?
Mayor, excuse me, before you go on, I'm not sure if you want to introduce any members of your cabinet that are
I would. I'm very proud to introduce all of them if I can, because I brought over a whole bunch of people to help me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, first and foremost, Mike Formby, Managing Director. Krista Jaram, Deputy Managing Director. I'll kind of go who's in front of me. Nola Miyazaki, Director of HR. Bugs Bacchio, our Deputy Director. Dr. James Island, Head of EMS. Ian Santi, our Deputy Director of EMS. Denise Iseri Matsubara, the Director of Housing. Kevin Auger, Deputy Director. Kat Tashner, Director of Department of Land Management. Who else we have? Andy Kawano, Director of BFS. And Carrie Castle, our Deputy Director of BFS. Have I missed anybody from our team? Nope, that's it. Thank you for that opportunity. I want to go to slide 2. So as I said, each mayor is going to speak to their own legislative initiatives. We have 2. So with respect to Honolulu Senate Bill 2201. Oh, okay. Thanks, Mike. 2201 relating to number plates that requires the use of okinas consistent with Hawaiian spellings and allows alternative use of upper and lowercase letters. I believe that both the State Department and HPD support this measure, and we're very much in favor of that measure. And then also Honolulu has offered Senate Bill 2202 relating to small purchases, which raises the minimum amount of small purchases from $25,000 to $50,000, noting that the $25,000 figure has not been adjusted for inflation since 1997. So that's our contribution to the H composition. Those are our 2 positions. Just move this up, Mike. Same slide? Okay. So there's a lot of information on this slide. So I want to talk first about our standalone non-appropriation bills. So related to Senate Bill 2220 on the vesting in the employees' retirement system. I think we've been very transparent about the considerable vacancies in our departments, despite an aggressive program to reform the way we recruit, hire, and retain our employees. It was one of the things when I first came into office that was pretty shocking to me because it was not anything that was ever discussed prior. So we've gone after that. We've made it a major priority. As an additional incentive, the Honolulu County supports lowering the vesting period to 5 years from the current 10 years as part of an incentive. Now, while I have staff here to answer any questions on our ERS vesting proposal, my understanding is that there's a state measure before the legislature, which our staff also supports. Senate Bill 2223 relating to municipal separate storm sewer system permits, MS4. The county is asking for relief from these fees assessed for the issuance of permits to county governments. The MS4 program currently includes state permittees, Department of Transportation, HCDA, DBED, et cetera, and the University of Hawaii. Those are our non-appropriation bills. On our standalone appropriation bills, and look, we gave this, we've not come here before asking for anything. This is our first time. And we certainly understand, not only as I've already referenced, the significance of the Maui wildfires, and as we heard the governor today in the State of the City address, but we need your help and your understanding on the following. So Senate Bill 2221, making appropriations to the Department of Land Management and the Department of Design and Construction of the City and County of Honolulu. We seek state funding for positions in surveying, for title searches and other related costs necessary for the City and County of Honolulu to fulfill the purpose of Act 210, Senate Bill 2237 in 2018, relating to public schools transferring fee simple title to parcels owned by the City and County of Honolulu and containing state schools to the Department of Education. This funding would support 2 full-time employees with fringe and the cost necessary to transfer a title. I'll be happy to go into detail if you want. Our second request is Senate Bill 2222, is asking for an appropriation to the Department of Emergency Services of the City and County of Honolulu. This measure is a response to Senate Concurrent Resolution 107, urging the City and County of Honolulu Crisis Outreach Response and Engagement Program, known as CORE, to their ability to expand services to Central Oahu, the North Shore, Leeward, and Windward regions on Oahu. We're very excited about this program. We got a bit distracted when we took over Leeward Resource Center and using our core personnel, but in conjunction with everything the governor announced today with healthcare workers, facilities that we own, and our ability to have a mobile crisis unit, which is a key strategy in the successful cities that we've studied in dealing with homelessness, this would really go. But the success we've had in the urban core has just created a real cry out from these other communities. And so we think this is really appropriate because we think this is the first big step. Having a mobile crisis unit mitigates the calls from 9/11 that require HPD and EMS and our limited resources there. And it's proven already to be very, very effective, and we want to build on that asset and that concept. So we're very excited about that program. We hope that you would see the benefit to that. Now, we've got a couple of other priorities that I'd like to just mention on slide 3. And that's House Bill 1808 and Senate Bill 2337 related to housing. So again, I want to thank the House and Senate for these measures as they follow our county's late attempt last year to deal with an issue brought to light by our work and bond council on city and county developed affordable housing, transit-oriented development projects. Now the map above that you see there shows the City and County of Honolulu's most recent acquisitions and below them. So the properties that you're looking at are in Evil A, bounded by Dillingham Boulevard and North King Street. The larger parcel with the red star on it is a 3.8 acre site contiguous with the Evil A rail station. And the smaller yellow parcel is the former First Hawaiian Bank parcel on North King Street. Our plan and our commitment to our communities is to construct activated, affordable housing developments, mixed income, and mixed use projects. Currently, the law as written does not allow the counties to use affordable housing bonds to develop iconic affordable housing projects in TOD communities where our residents have access to commercial, retail services, institutional, educational, industrial, and government uses. It precludes us from doing that. So essentially, for affordable housing projects, the counties need the same development potential as HHFDC, and we respectfully ask for the support of both houses this session. I have several key staff members here to answer any questions in detail, but we've talked about this since I've been in office and the disparity between the county and the state. And housing, as we all know, is a very complicated subject. And we're just simply asking for an even playing field to go forward with the plans we have and have the city be an active player in the creation of affordable housing. So finally, in closing, I want the legislature to be aware that the city of Honolulu has been working for some time on financial incentives to encourage the film industry to invest in locating, building, and operating production studios at UH West Oahu in conjunction with UH West Oahu's creative media program. And our 2023 bill is Bill 59. And we hope that the state can continue to expand on credits and other financial incentives to take these film industry investments a reality. This is a business that I come to this job at having spent more than 4 decades in. And I've even, been involved in those kinds of productions. And I know for a fact, and I've had recent conversations with major studios, we're turning away a lot of business simply because we don't have facilities. But beyond the business that we're turning away, it's the jobs that it creates, the high-paying, really good jobs, the opportunity for people to make careers in this industry. Hawaii has great iconic appeal. We're doing about $400 million a year right now, and we could easily, I believe, with some hard work, once we have the facilities going, more than double that amount, if not break $1 billion a year, with some great jobs for a lot of people. This is a really serious endeavor. In becoming mayor, so many people talked in the middle of COVID about what we were doing to either diversify our economy or build on our existing assets. This has been a good business for this state. We need your help to make it an even better business. Thank you. I'll answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Any questions from the House? Go ahead.
Hello.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question about your priorities for planning for. So it looks like your request is $3.5 million, but I just want to know what your current vacancy looks like for EMS and where you aim to it is. Sorry, I know EMS is.
Well, yeah, I want Jim to come up. Now, keep in mind, he'll explain this to you, but our core and EMS are different programs, okay? I'll have Jim talk to you about it.
Thank you for that question. Our department, the Emergency Services Department, has 4 branches or divisions: EMS, Ocean Safety, Health Services, which is our occupational health clinic, and CORE, or Specialized Medicine. The CORE program is partially federally and city funded and even a little bit state funded. We're using some federal funds that went to the state. And so we hire emergency medical technicians in both CORE and EMS, and sometimes they will, CORE EMTs have gone to the city EMS side and vice versa, so they will transfer sometimes. Right now, I think Ian, our deputy, can give you actually the breakdown of the vacancies in EMS and also as well as CORE. But the funding we're requesting here is specifically for CORE. Yeah.
Again, Ian Santi, Deputy Director, Emergency Services. So in our EMS program right now, we service with 21 ambulance units on the entire island. They're 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have approximately 260 type employees at this point, not including field support personnel. We recently graduated in December a class of 26 personnel for our EMT program. They're finishing up their evaluation and they're going to be in full force working on one-on-one on the ambulance in about a week. With that said, we have approximately 10 vacancies with us in EMS, and that's specifically more in our communication center, not in the field personnel at this point. And in our core program, we have approximately 27 employees with us between community health workers and EMTs and other medical staff. Those positions are all pretty much, as Dr. Arlen pointed out, from various types of funding. Majority of them are contract funded.
Thank you for explaining that relationship. Chair,
Go ahead.
I guess my concern is that, we folks recently shut down some of your, I guess, dispatches, not just dispatches, but, I guess, your staff starting at the community to different areas about what time period it was. Do you recall that? It was last, 23rd or fall, where you actually closed down some of those services.
You're speaking about core or the 911 EMS?
911, I'm just, sorry, what I'm trying to, get is that you folks just have, you guys have the capacity to even expand. I know you guys have 27 on staff already for your core, but I just want to make sure that, because core is also under, this something under your purview, correct?
Correct. I think the question, I guess what you're asking is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is as Dr. Ireland pointed out, our core program is completely independent of the 911 service. Our core program is outreach. Again, CORE stands for Crisis Outreach, Response, and Engagement. It's, as the mayor pointed out, our mobile outreach program to those individuals who sometimes are what we call our hyper users of our EMS program, is to address that by bringing down the call volume of the 911s to our dispatchers for the cases where it could be managed without a 911 and more so with outreach. So as part of the capability or capacity, it's two separate entities, and we would still have to go and recruit and hire staff as we expand core, but we would need the funding to support that expansion.
Oh, I see. So you guys are still going to be looking for more staff in that 27?
Correct. So 27, the funding that the mayor is asking for you folks to support is to hire additional 16 staff of medical personnel and outreach staff.
This is such an important topic and is so intricately linked to housing. Let me just offer a little bit more perspective. The core program came about after our analysis, if you will, and due diligence on best practices. Where was it working, in which cities, and how were they doing it? And we looked at Houston, we looked at Denver, we looked at Boston, we looked at Eugene, we looked at a lot of other places. But fundamental to the cities where they were really doing well with it, that they had a mobile crisis unit. And to give a quick perspective, I don't have the 23 numbers, but in 22, 911 received over 1 million calls. And nearly 700,000 of those calls were related to either homeless or some kind of social situation, okay? And that was very costly because they would deploy HPD, they would deploy an ambulance, perhaps the ambulance would pick them up, take them to Queens, they would get cleaned up, a couple hours later back out on the street, to considerable cost, but no real systemic effect. This is designed in part to be the first leg of what we hope to be able to do in conjunction and collaboration with the state of providing facilities to a city and the healthcare workers today that Governor Green talked about in his tuition repayment program, being able to get up, that's been the missing factor in a three-legged stool. And if we can combine all three, we can only take people off the streets, we can do a really good job at treating them. And we're really confident. But this mobile crisis unit, given the limitations of EMS as it is, which is already strained on our island in the way of personnel and ambulances, is an important dimension to dealing with the homeless. Okay?
Okay, wait, you know what, there's several others, so we'll get back to you. Okay, Senator Favela.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions for Parks.
I don't believe the Parks is here, but Senator will try to the best of our ability to answer. But I know you want pavilions instead of trees. You told me that today very clearly.
No, Mayor. Let me finish. It's not just about my community park. It's parks in general on the west side, on the lack of maintenance on that. We just wanted to know what would be you guys' approach and plan to upgrade and to continue to keep our parks on the west side in not being overgrown and overrun with a lot of debris. I know we have a houseless issue, but that shouldn't be the situation why our parks cannot be clean and safe like the rest of the communities in Oahu.
You know, it's an important priority for us. Last year, we took our entire team, the whole cabinet, and we did something unprecedented. We did 11 town halls in 10 weeks in more than all the 9 county districts. And if there was a common denominator in any of them, it was about parks and where people go to play and the recreational uses that they have. So I can only tell you, part of it's a staffing issue, Senator, to be very honest with you. We talk about vacancies. We've probably got 2,000 vacancies in the city, and Parks and Recreation is in our top 6 of having openings. And I can only tell you, I know that Director Thielen's not here right now. We have the right people in place. You can, as evidenced by some of the things we have been able to do. And I can only promise you, we're trying to keep it all as best we can.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, question for House, Rep. Kobayashi.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
you just said that housing is very complicated. We have a major housing bill being presented by the new housing chair in the House. It will be the biggest change in state involvement in development within the urban core, particularly residential lots in the urban zoned areas. I'm wondering if you have been apprised of this. The bill states, among other things, a residential lot within an urban district shall, repeat, shall be allowed at least 4 residential units. This has been called the monster residential lot proposal. Aside from monster houses, we now will have both monster houses and likely, if this bill passes, monster residential lots. Any comments?
Well, first of all, on the monster houses, I think, revoked 15, 16, 17 licenses to date, and it was one of those things we tried to bring it to check. I'm not familiar with this piece of legislation. When I tell you, sir, that the housing was complicated, when coming into the city and first-time mayor, I looked at what the city was doing, what was its role, where was the handoff we could take and build on that, and there was none. It was one person working in the Department of Housing for the city, and not only that, it was fragmented out over a number of different departments. Not only that, there was nobody there that could speak the same language, and all I was told is, we gave up a long time ago. The city hadn't been involved in private activity bonds for nearly 25 years, had lapsed funds in the Affordable Housing Fund, weren't distributing monies, et cetera, et cetera. And then it took on a language all of its own between HHFDC, 201H, and everything else. I feel very good about the people and the plans we have in place now. And I have today Denise Siri Matsubara, Kevin Auger, and Kat Tashner between what we're doing in housing and land management, I think is a strategy that the city hasn't had. So I don't know anything about the monster residential lots. We've drawn a line in the sand. We've made it clear to the public that before we're done 5 years from now, I'm sorry, that sounds presumptuous because it is an election year, but we're planning on having 5 more years, that the city will contribute 18,000 rental units to the housing mix, in addition to whatever the state can get done. We're determined to do that, and we're off to a fast and strong start.
Thank you. I believe that this bill merits close consideration by all mayors.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Kim. Wait, is your mic on? The other way.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. You talked
Senator.
about the film industry and the movie studio. Can you share a little bit more as to where is your intention of doing it, and how does it dovetail with the University of Hawaii land, on the University of Hawaii property?
It's on the University, it's on West Oahu's campus.
Okay.
It's a 17 acres, and it ties in with the program that Chris Lee has out there and the room available for that. And in fact, I think with respect to studios, we're really in a position to even negotiate stronger with them about exactly what gets constructed. And There are several players involved. We've come to an agreement on property taxes, and the governor's come to an agreement on forgiving of the $100 million of investment on the GE tax.
When you say we have an agreement.
Well, we've had verbal, we've got to go through the process. We know what we're prepared to do. It was a matter of having both the city and the state combine in that effort. You know, in this kind of business, Senator, there's a quid pro quo. You've got to be able to buy the business for something in order to attract it. If you look at where film studios thrive, it's exactly what's gone on. But the revenue benefit coming back to the state is significant.
Yeah, I think many of us in the legislature support that, and we have been pursuing it. You know, it's taken longer than it should, so it's news to us, and it's good news that the city wants to get involved. And so we're just wanting to understand, have you been working with the University of Hawaii, or what seems to be an obstacle? Certainly, this is, you know, something that we should all be on the same page on.
I think it kind of 59 got delayed and deferred now to this year. You know, the past obstacles are what they are. For the last 3 years, you know, I can't tell you how much of this time has been distracted by COVID, overcoming that, getting operational. But this was something we had in our sights really right from the get-go because it was there for the taking. And it's great to hear that the state would be supportive. This is something we should do. This is good,
So,
clean business.
Are you working with University of Hawaii? Are you working with West Oahu?
I've talked with Chris Lee. Mike might want to say something here.
Yeah, but Chris Lee doesn't make the final
Yeah, I know.
decisions.
Yes.
So, Senator, I just wanted to let you know that I met with Chris Lee last week, and he has a planning document that he's about to put out, and that planning document is probably 300 pages, and it's through the work that he's done with the University of Hawaii. And so I'm not going to guess as to when Chris is going to actually put that document out, but it has a lot of information about the work that's been done over the last 3+ years.
When you say work, do you mean planning and design, construction?
Conceptual drawings, how the build-out would be, where the studios would be, what they would look like, who the investors are that are interested in coming here. Chris Lee's been working that very hard, and he's been working with UH.
Okay, because we had UH in front of us, and we didn't get anything from them regarding a film studio at all. So like I said, this is news to
I
us.
appreciate that heads up. You know, to be honest with you, Senator, I've not been involved directly with the university other than with Chris, but I have had conversations, numerous, with various studios and including investors.
So I suggest you folks talk with the University of Hawaii, Jan Govea, and the president or the Board of Regents, because it's above Chris Lee's pay grade, I think, when it comes to.
Then we'll take that as a recommendation because I feel very strongly about this. It's right there in our grasp to be had. And it should have already happened, to be very
Yeah, and
candid with you.
Senator Kidani has also been a point on some of this as well, so
Okay.
it's news to her as well, so thank you.
I know, thank you.
Questions from the House? Who's first? Keela. Oh, Rep. Keela.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
So with the 3.5 million that's being asked. Hello? Okay.
Yep.
So with the 3.5 million that's being asked, and then you're talking about a million phone calls to HPD, is there, I think, an appetite to make a separate line for homeless incidents that can be referred to directly to the appropriate agency instead of having to go directly to the hotline?
We actually have a core hotline. I don't know the number, Jim, do you? We have a core hotline. That's one of the things we want to set forth. We want to be sure we had the resources in place to do that. But I'm going to say it again. We already have seen the success of core in the urban core, if you will. One of the things that we know, homelessness has become very pervasive, and I don't have to tell you, Representative Keela, and so we want to be able to get out to those outlying places. The number, Jim? Yeah. All right.
Real quick, I'm Jim Ireland again from Emergency Services. So we do have a core hotline, and we put that number out, but it's a non-emergency line, more if you're concerned about somebody at a bus stop or you see an encampment somewhere. But our challenge is because the team is so busy in Chinatown, and to a lesser extent Makiki, and then also in Waikiki, we really want to service places like Wahiawa and the west side of Oahu and the North Shore and the windward side, because we know we're getting calls that there's encampments there, and rather than just being able to take a day trip, we want to have teams that would sustain presence in those communities. But what we are also developing is what I would call 911 diversion. So the 911 call comes in for somebody, let's say, that's at a bus stop. If it's a emergency, then the right responders have to go. It has to be EMS, the fire department if needed, police. But if it's somebody who's not having a medical emergency, but they're just at the bus stop and maybe they look disheveled or it looks like they're living there, then 911 can potentially divert that call to the core team and they would go out just on radio dispatch. But we do have a non-emergency line right now dedicated for core. That's used quite a bit, but perhaps we could get it more out there to be used in the future. But we also tell people, if it's an emergency, call 911. But these funds would allow us to have sustained presence in the more further reaches of the island of Oahu, besides just the urban core.
I mean, because to be quite frank, right, Jim, or in my time in the last year, it's not come to the west side. And
Well, we have been out there, because I've been out there myself,
Yes,
but not in a sustained presence,
yes,
you're right.
But I'm gonna say until I think we figure out something, I don't think day trips are bad, right? Because nobody knows about core outside of the urban core. And we calling HPD, I'm calling HPD, and there's nothing being resolved. And you can point to any encampment from Makaha to Nanakuli that need this medical help. And so for me, I'm just trying to figure out if that is the plan. I think that is great, but until then, can there be more effort to make a rotating? I know it's not sustainable, but I think if I understand the business districts are what need to be maintained, but then how do we tell residents right in our rural communities that feeling neglected, they feeling left out, and honestly not seeing movement? And it's a tough position for me because I understand the bureaucracy and the things that have to go into place, but it's just continually, and I know point in time count is tomorrow, but I'm just making that plea. If there's any appetite to do rotations until then, I think that the services that are spent well in the urban core will be greatly appreciated in rural communities going along.
Point taken. The other thing I just want to add is in my interactions with people, the populations of homeless, and I'm probably telling things you already know, but are unique to different areas. So for instance, downtown in Chinatown, there's more people who've just gotten here from somewhere else. There's more mental illness. Whereas, for instance, on the west side, a lot of the people I've interacted with are born and raised on the west side. So they're not going to be so comfortable about taking a shelter option in Iwilei, for instance, when they're born and raised on the west side. So coupled with, I think, the expansion of CORE, we also need, again, in partnership with the state, to work on solutions in, from the city side, those council districts, so people can stay or have housing or shelter options near their friends and family where they were born and raised, versus, moving them all the way across the island, no matter where they're coming from, and being in an area where, they don't have friends or they don't know the beaches. So I think coupled with the expansion of CORE and working with the state, we do need to find housing and shelter solutions on different parts of Oahu.
But I think you just said it, Jim, that core is servicing transient population. On my side, those are the people that live there.
Okay, you know what? If we can just limit it to question and answer and not have a separate conversation.
We'll meet after.
So that we can move on.
Thank you.
Senator Milwaukee.
Dr. Island, stay up there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dr. Island, I just would like a breakdown, if you have, of the 3.5 million. What portion of that is core and what portion is EMS? Because I know that it was cutting into your emergency services, but what is a breakup down?
It's all core for what we're asking.
The 3.5 is all core.
All core, but I'll let Deputy Santee give you kind of the details.
Yeah, what?
Maybe if you can break it down, what staffing, equipment, current
Understood.
operating?
Thanks. Just give me a second to pull it up real quick.
Okay, while you're pulling that up,
I'm ready,
are you-
Senator.
Go ahead.
So this is for the biennium request, right? So for the first year, 1.79 million for FY '25, 977,000 roughly is for salaries, 547,000 is for fringe. Current expense is 113,000 and equipment is about 160,000. And the equipment initial cost is for a vehicle to locate out to the west side for response in that area. And the staffing covers about 16 employees, as we said earlier, to cover both medical and community health workers.
Okay, thank you. Rep, are you?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mayor, I'm looking at your HB 1808 Just trying to understand the capacity that you guys have to implement the program, especially noting that last week, Department of Education came in and said a lot of their CIP projects were lapsing because of permits taking too long. So what is your capacity to implement some kind of project that HHFCC could do for you guys?
You talk about transfer of titles from the school lands, which,
The development for mixed-use commercial, and
oh,
I'm just trying to understand the capacity.
yeah, you talk about the Eagle Eye Resource Center,
Yeah.
right? Well, our intention is, we've now closed on the deal. We just did a walkthrough the other day, and we're going to put it out for RFP and with developers. This is an incredible piece of real estate in conjunction with the eventual stop of Skyline there, combined with working our way to Dilly. In fact, Kat may want to talk about this. We're actually negotiating for several other parcels. We're looking to really transform that area. We think, that this is going to be, from a development standpoint, if we're capable of achieving what we think we can do, a very highly desirable situation, right? I mean, it's right there, proximity. So we're looking at it being affordable and mixed. We have a lot of confidence. In the interim, we haven't announced this yet, but in the interim, it's probably going to be a facility for us to be able to put homeless people in while we go about the task of doing it. But I have a lot of confidence that the development community is going to jump all over this. We just closed on the deal. This is an incredible opportunity for this, from the discussions we've had. So, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that question. Mike Formby, Managing Director. I'd like Andy Kwando to give you a little bit of information on how we had to finance that acquisition, but the point I think we need to make on this bill is that because we don't currently have the capacity to do mixed use, mixed retail, which we want for this property because the rail station is right next door, and we're working hard about changing the orientation of the rail station so that the community, including our community and the community on the other side, which is Castle and Cook, 19 acres in Ivalai, developing affordable housing, they will have provisions, whether it's Safeway, Long's, medical clinics, senior care, child care. We don't have the ability to do that, so we had to actually buy this property with short-term commercial paper. We couldn't even use affordable housing bonds because we cannot plan to do anything other than a affordable housing complex under the current law. So we're using commercial paper, paying a higher interest rate to buy this property, hoping that coming to the legislature and working with the House and the Senate, we can get this legislation passed, and we have affordable housing bond capacity. That is not an issue. We have more than enough affordable housing bond money. And so we're putting in our fiscal year 25 budget an appropriation for planning, and we're going to begin an aggressive planning project working with all of our neighbors. And by the way, on that map, you see the green property is state of Hawaii land. So you're right there with us too, and we want to activate that entire region, but it's not a capacity issue, it's a color of money issue. And so Andy Kawano can give you more information on what we've done short-term financing, but we don't want to carry these commercial bonds. We don't want to be flipping them over. It's just too much interest for the city.
Andy Kawano, Director of Budget and Fiscal Services. Yeah, with regard to financing the Ivalai Center acquisition, we used short-term commercial paper, taxable commercial paper, actually. So we have full flexibility with regard to, what we decide to do going forward once we find out as to whether or not the legislation passes. When the legislation, we hope, passes with your support, we will make adjustments to our financing structure for the project and use perhaps a mixture of longer-term tax-exempt and taxable financing as we move forward to reduce our debt service. Any questions on?
Senator Favela?
Sure.
Does that answer satisfy you?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Mayor,
Yes.
just a question. We keep on talking about Waianae district being, the night district. But where are we in increasing the beats in the area. It's okay to want to have a ninth district and bring all the bells and whistles, but it's not going to create more beats. And in our district, we need more beats because we need more people understanding that we have more officers in the community. And having one District 9 police station with majors and all of that, how are we going to fill the patrol positions? So there's any way we can boot, I guess, the horse before the cart or the cart before the horse, you know what I mean? To having increased the beats on the District 8.
You know, when I think about the 2,000 plus vacancies we have, HPD is not even really in the top 6 with more than 400 vacancies, yet it's absolutely critical to fill. We've been doing everything we possibly can and I was just sat Friday night at the graduation from this last class of, with all due respect to the 14 men and women, with 4 women and 10 men that graduated. It's a very small class. We're doing everything we possibly can. We've evolved into flexible hours. I've just signed recently an incentive package for new recruits. They've modified the classes, not lowering the bar, but they've made smaller classes to require more attention, if you will, with more frequency to try to get more people to graduate. It's, being a police officer right now is, it's somebody making that decision. It takes a lot in today's world. And so we're doing everything we can to make it attractive. The pay is certainly not an objection. Compensation's there. Last year, we gave them an unprecedented raise. We've done everything we can. And my conversations with Chief Logan are consistently starting off with how's recruiting coming? So I hear you on that. We've been out there. We've met at the police station on Waianae. We've tried to take it head on. But as far as when I could tell you we'll have more officers out there on the beat, I can't tell you. I can only tell you that we're doing everything we can to recruit for a police department and making it attractive for people to stay, including retention bonuses for senior officers.
The thing is exactly what the two gentlemen, or one of the gentlemen said over there.
Excuse me. We're only going to allow one, because we have 4 counties. We're still only on Honolulu.
All
And
right.
so if I could just get the members to ask all their questions as concise as possible and not have these conversations back and forth. Okay, who's from the House?
Here, sir.
Rep Ward.
Ward. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 2 quick questions.
Yes, sir.
The first is, thank you for your
You get
robust...
one quick question.
Oh, one...
And then we have to, because we have quite a bit of members.
Okay. Thank you for your endorsement for the film industry. We should be the Hollywood of the Pacific. It's a no-brainer.
Question.
But in your remarks, sir, you said that we don't have a film tax credit sufficient. We know that the winners are Georgia and Kentucky, and we're behind. What do you think the tax credit should be? This is your advice to us, please.
Well, I don't have that defined number right now. I think we're talking about it was its length of time, and it had to do with Andy. I might want to bring you up. Where's Andy? We've had conversations. That's the magic number. I'm not the tax guy. I've been waiting for them to come down on. But my understanding was that we were going to forgive for 30 years. And you know the number? Did you have a question? Yeah.
Well, I cannot answer the question about what the state's tax credit should be, but I do know from listening to testifiers, developers that want to come here, they're saying that they're going to spend upwards of nearly $1 billion, to build a state-of-the-art, current facility, film producing facility. With regard to what we're going to do is what we plan to essentially waive the improvement component of the assessed valuation from having to pay real property tax. So the developer investor would not have to pay real property taxes on their assessment for the improvement portion, but would have to pay real property taxes on the land value, that they use. So we're talking about 10 acres or more. And for the city, we're not talking about a whole lot of revenue that we collect, but I think downstream, the value of the improvements that they put in will receive an exemption and help to, justify the investment in building a facility. And that combined with the state credit, we hope will be enough to attract people to invest here.
Thank you. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Chair.
Just real quick, Senator Del Cruz, in about 3 weeks, I'm meeting with Universal, Disney, Amazon, and a couple other studio heads. I'll be able to get you that number very specifically on what it is they're looking at, okay?
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Senate. Senator Kim.
So in light of some of the CIP projects that are, the DOE is proposing to lapse, in going over that, we found that in certain projects, they're waiting for building permits, and that in one case, on one of my schools, it's like 14 months. The wait, they're saying, is going to take 14 more months, despite the fact that they've been already into the process. Is there, I know you've talked about this in streamlining some of those permits, but when it comes to, government facilities, I'm not sure what the hangup might be that takes 2 years to get a building permit.
Senator, I can tell you from a problem-solving standpoint, there was no greater problem coming in than DPP. And we knew that. We know it had been broken for decades. We also understood the economic impact of it and all the other aspects of part of what you're alluding to right now. I can honestly tell you the progress we've made, irrespective of that time period, right now has been remarkable compared to where we were. And I think we're really right on the threshold, and I'm confident that a year from now, just a year from now, I'll stand here, you're going to have a very different impression of DPP than you currently have, which is totally justified. The delays have been costly in more ways than others, and we've solved a lot through investments in people, investments in technology, in other resources, but we had to try to understand the complexity of that problem, not the least of which was we had a criminal element happen 4 months after we got into the job. So I'm not looking to make excuses. Everybody told me DPP could not be fixed. I think if you brought representatives from the solar industry in here right now, they would tell you that they can't believe the improvement we made last year.
Hopefully, you'll look at our public works
I
projects.
promise you we will.
Okay, House? No? Okay, any last questions from the Senate? Oh, Senator Kidani.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The issue with film studios, Senator Kim and I have been dealing with this for a couple of years now, and I think it'd be wise for whenever the city is dealing with the film studios and meetings, if we could be included, so if it is a state issue, we could hear that and resolve it.
I would love that, okay?
Rather than going through this over and over again.
I would welcome that. Thank you.
Okay, Rep. Ward.
Very quickly, Mr. Mayor, when do you anticipate that the price per ride will be going down? And is it actually $40 for the city to put in what otherwise is a $3 fare? In other words, an update on the SkyTrain, please.
Well, Skyline right now is the same as a bus. It's at $3. It's $1.25 for seniors and $1.25 for kids, I think, under the age of 12. And then with the school, with students, there's a holo pass that's also discounted. I don't know exactly what that number is. We hadn't talked about lowering the price of that at this point, given those other discounts. We're trying to build our ridership, to be honest with you. And I don't think until we get a satisfactory ridership, we can talk about lowering the price. But the fact that we kept it even with buses and knowing how many rides, the ridership of the buses being what it is, we don't think it's a deterrent. We don't think it's a pricing objection. I've not heard that.
So there's light at the end of the tunnel.
There's light at the end of the tunnel always. I mean, I think, look, this is a transformative project for future generations. We know that. Right now, I think we've gotten off to a great start operationally. We're still dealing through things. We only began June 30th. But the one thing I know is it's running really well right now. It's also going to challenge us financially while we build ridership in the operations. But I think at the end of the day, we've had a long-standing award-winning bus service. We have an excellent handy van service. And I expect people will be talking in the same terms about Skyline and the rail project in not too long a time from now.
Okay, thank you. Senate, Senator Vavella.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment on the question. The city receives general excise tax and monies from the state construction for the Honolulu Rail Skyline. Question is, Can you give us an update on your recent negotiations with the Federal Transit Administration regarding the release of the federal dollars for the project status?
Yeah, I'll let Mike handle that, but I could tell you we're there, but I'll let Mike handle that because he has an extensive background with HART and the FTA.
So Senator Mike Formby, my understanding is you're asking for an update on the release of federal funds. So the full funding grant agreement, the amended full funding grant agreement passed out of the committee, council committee, and it's before full council this week. When it passes out of full council, then the FTA has indicated that they will sign the document. So we're just waiting for that final procedural act, and then we'll be working with the FTA on the date to sign the document.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, anyone from House?
Thank you for that question.
You got a follow-up?
What's the plans to increase like sewer capacity so that we can address some of these affordable housing needs?
On infrastructure?
Yes.
It's a big question. You know, we've invested $6 million in our budget this year on infrastructure. It was unprecedented for the city. $2 million in Halava, $2 million in Ivalai, and $2 million, I believe, in out in Waipahu. That's the magic ticket for development, right? And so we've been very focused on it. Mike, if you want to add anything on that, but we're concerned about the infrastructure issues. And so that's part of, well, I can go off on tangents. Senator De La Cruz doesn't want me to, but go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, just for clarification, the $6 million was a planning initiative in 3 tranches, and one was for West Oahu, one was for Halava, and one was for Ivalai. And it allows the city to do scalable analysis of future expansion. So we know right now what the system will accommodate in terms of new affordable housing units. And then if we know that there's a plan to expand through construction at a certain rate, we can project what it's going to take for us to meet those needs. So the 3 regions that we're looking at, Halava because of the stadium development, Ivalai because of all the affordable housing TOD, and then West Oahu. So we know where we're at currently. The plan is to be ahead of where we have to be as construction commences.
Okay, Senator Milwaukee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to circle back on your permitting process. When we're talking about affordable housing, we're talking about the schools that need to be renovated or anything that has to do with construction. It still goes back to your DPP. And I'm just wondering, what is your timeline? And are you streamlining in, small projects that perhaps you can find some other way of dealing with it so the big projects can get done and done more quickly?
Yeah, we want to give priority to the right projects. We've had to go pretty carefully up till now because there was a history of favoritism and other kinds of things going on, and we've stayed pretty balanced while we made the investments in people and technology. And Mike's standing right behind me. But I can tell you that we understand the need to have priorities on certain projects, and the time is money, and time is very costly.
Senator Milwaukee, I want to share one initiative that we have, and I'm thankful to the HGEA for working with us. The HGEA understands that we have critical vacancies in our commercial plan review division, and that's really what we're talking about with DOE and affordable housing projects, commercial. And so working with HGEA, they have agreed that we can outsource commercial plan review, which we're going to do while we aggressively try to recruit and fill. And part of that means that we have to increase salaries to bring people into the department. We simply have not been able to recruit and bring experienced plan reviewers into DPP. And I think part of it is because of the history and the image that DPP has, but in turning it around, we've agreed to raise salaries. So we're in purchasing. We hope to be out of purchasing with the RFP by end of January or February and bring on commercial plan reviewers, and that should expedite the process.
We're also going to use technology in reading codes, something that heretofore was a problem dealing with the unions, and we just don't have the manpower here. I heard the governor this morning talk about a really low unemployment rate, and that's startling given our needs, if you will, and I'm sure it's felt throughout the state and other businesses because I continue to talk to people, and they say to me, where are the people? So we're up against it, but the union's been very, very helpful. But I do think one of the more complicated things we had going on within DPP was code reading. Reading the codes has become very complex, and the fact we're going to be able to do that electronically now is really going to help. Just as we used AI on the bot, was taken, just to give you a quick example, we came into 3,600 applications to get through pre-screen, took an average of 6 months. There's no longer a backlog, and you through pre-screening now in 1 to 3 days using AI. We will get there. It took time to make sure we had the right stuff, we're making the right acquisitions, and that's what's happening. So I'm going to say it again, a year from today when I'm here, okay, I think you're going to have a very different impression of DPP.
One thing, just to know that we lapse funds because of permitting, it's that long period, so if you can see the importance of it, thank you.
Yes, we do.
Okay, we're going to call a recess, and if the mayor would like to address the members at some additional time, we can be more than happy to do an info briefing.
I'm sorry I took up all the time for my colleagues, Mayor Roth and Mayor Bisson,
No, I'm just not sure what time their flights are.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the questions today by everybody. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to call a recess so that we can set up the next presenter, which is the County of Hawaii. Okay, short recess. Okay, calling the joint hearing back to order. So now we're here from the County of Hawaii. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Aloha. Chair Dela Cruz, Vice Chair Moriwaki of Ways and Means, and then Chair Yamashita and Vice Chair Kitagawa from the Finance Committees and all Senate and all of our representatives, members today. Thank you very much for having me. Mitch Roth, Hawaii County not prosecuting mayor. Forgot where I would. It's only been a couple of years since I was in that other role. So moving forward, we're going to talk a little bit about just some of the needs and some of the things we're doing in Hawaii County. Clicking the clicker, but it doesn't seem to want to click for me here. I don't know if there's a. Arrow to the right? Yeah, it's not. It's got that bar up there.
Wait, somebody going to help him? Should I call a recess?
No.
Nope, it was working, now it's not. Sorry.
Beautiful slide too.
Okay.
There it is.
Hopefully it will, we'll move on. For Hawaii County, our mission has and continues to be to foster a sustainable community where everyone can thrive. And we talk about sustainability. What sustainability really means to me is the ability to allow our kids to raise their kids here in Hawaii. We've come to a time in history where there's more Hawaiians living out of the state than in the state. And as we lose our Hawaiians, we lose our culture, and as we lose our culture, we lose our sense of who we are. And so we've really been focusing in these areas, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But before I go there, I'd like to, there we go, talk about some of the partnerships that we've had with the state, and really want to appreciate the legislature for all the help that they've given, plus all of the state departments. One of the things that we're working on, we have the broadband Hui for the state. Hawaii Island has really taken a leadership role. I just got back from Washington, D.C. last week at the Conference of Mayors, where the temperature outside was about the same as it is in this room for some reason. But Hawaii, as a state, we're one of 4 states that have taken the federal government up so far on broadband funds, and Hawaii Island has really made some great progress closing the loop on our broadband infrastructure throughout the island. So right now, wherever you are on Hawaii Island, technically you should be able to get internet connectivity. And that wouldn't have happened but for the partnerships that we've had with the state. As you heard the governor talk about what the lieutenant governor's program with early childhood education and capital improvements, Hawaii County has really been leaning forward in that area as well. Our transportation, we've been working very closely with Department of Transportation. Ed Sniffen over there and his team have been really great. We're looking at putting in about 18 electric buses. We have our first hydrogen bus on Hawaii Island. We're looking at getting another one pretty soon. That will be really important as we look at the greenhouse funding that's going to be coming out from the federal government pretty soon. We've been working on things such as invasive species management. You heard Mayor Blangiardi talking about the film and creative industries. We're doing some of that stuff on Hawaii Island. Regenerative tourism, safe streets for all, indigenous data science, and climate pollution reduction grant, as well as workforce development. All those things we're working with the state on, and really want to appreciate all of the help that we've gotten. You know, one of the things that we've learned from Maui is that what affects one island affects all of us. And so if you remember back to August 8th, the day of the fires in Maui, we also had fires. And so Hawaii Island is not immune from natural disasters. These natural disasters have taught us a lot of things, but in talking with the community, some of the things that we're seeing that have become top of mind for our community are things like evacuation routes. One of those is for Waikoloa, where we have, I think, the largest cul-de-sac in the United States. We're working with that community, and we're working with some other communities. It is a big issue on Hawaii Island. A couple of years ago, I had to evacuate Waikoloa, and we realized that, you know, that could be dangerous. And so we have been also receiving some assistance from state DOT in our emergency evacuation route, and we're looking at hopefully opening up another road there, and that'll probably need some help from the state. Sirens, Maui sirens became a big issue. We have some sirens that are actually under HAIMA that are supposed to be coming to Hawaii Island. We have a couple that are out of service. Again, Waikoloa, they've been asking for a while, and we have some other ones that we're looking for our parks. And there's other preventative measures that we're looking at, and I think the legislature will be looking at this year as well. We move to our priorities and our operational. Again, we go to that whole idea of sustainability. If we're going to allow our kids to raise their kids here, we have to focus on housing. And we heard that in the governor. We heard that from Mayor Blangiardi. When he talks about his shortages, every single one of those that he mentioned, I think we're seeing throughout the state. I know we see it on Hawaii Island. But we've had some really great successes coming in. We saw some of the reports from UHERO. UHERO had us as the worst in the country as far as permitting. It was taking about 200 days to get a new housing permit. We've brought that down to about 30 to 40 days. So we've made quite a bit of progress there. We've issued more permits for housing than any other island has. When you look at the amount that we put in the last 5 years, according to UHERO, I think we've done about 700 more than Honolulu and about 1,000 more than Kauai and Maui together. So we've taken the worst, and no offense to my fellow mayors, but I think we've actually made some great strides to become at least the best in the state. We need to provide affordable housing. So when we look at affordable housing, we came in 3 years ago, there was about 1,200 units in our pipeline. That pipeline takes a long time. Part of that is state, part of that is county. We are now up to about 7,000, just a little bit under 7,000 affordable housing units. And again, that takes a while. So this last year, we built probably about 200 or 300 affordable housing units. In 2024, this year, we'll be building about 1,400 or 1,500 affordable housing units for the state. So we've really moved up on the pipeline there. One of the issues throughout the state, and I heard questions from Mayor Blangiardi, had to do with homelessness. And one of the ways that we have to improve the way we're dealing with homelessness is actually providing housing for people before they become homeless. And so those stats are really important to us. But it's more than just providing housing. We've been looking at ways that we can assist people who are in need. And this last year, we provided about $8 million of our own money that we had from a secondary taxing initiative to help our nonprofits to make sure that they're able to deliver services, to make sure that they're caring for people. We also took some other funds and we put those funds to housing. I think it was a total of 17 million for years 23 and 24 of our own funds. We need to improve. Things we need to improve is our infrastructure. And our infrastructure, the number one thing on our infrastructure is our wastewater facilities. If you think about this, we have more cesspools in Hawaii Island, about 48,000 that need to be eventually converted, but we have wastewater facilities that are in really terrible shape. And I know that I think both the House and the Senate, WAM and Finance came out and they actually saw our Hilo wastewater treatment plant, a treatment plant that could be the next Red Hill, releasing millions of gallons out into the ocean if we don't take care of it. And so we've been working on this for the last couple of years. It's probably going to be our biggest spend that we have. Not to mention Hilo wastewater, but the other side of the island, Kona, we know that facilities over there also need to be improved. And we're working on those things. But the other thing in infrastructure we need to be working on is our roads. In the last, this last year, we doubled the amount of roads that we've paid. Things that we also have to look at is our parks and other facilities. We went from a parks budget for maintenance and repair of about 450,000, excuse me, when we came in for 302 facilities to over 4 million, and still not enough to take care of everything. We had buildings literally holding their hands, standing up with termites holding hands and singing Kumbaya, I like to tell people. We need to extend our agricultural leases and other land leases, and we need to do those things early. And we really want to thank Department of Land and Natural Resources for the work that they've been doing together with us. I know last year we were coming and we were asking, even though that wasn't for really the county, but the state in general, our healthcare facilities, both in Kona and in Hilo. And let me just start off and thank you for those funds, because those were really important. Some of those funds are going to a land lease that dealt with DLNR at Hilo Hospital, where they've given over land and able to build things like another cath lab. Cath labs are things that help people when they have heart attacks. When I had my heart attack, I had to go to a cath lab. We had one, we now have two. And so those things are really important. Making sure that our kids can stay here and enjoy Hawaii, we also need to make sure that the lands that they have are still there. And so in our administration, we've actually purchased more public open space natural resource lands to provide to our kids for the future. And that's really important. These are beaches that will be there for time and perpetuity. And then we need to partner. We need to partner as much as we can. We've really enjoyed the partnerships that we've had with the state, with our private partners and others, but to make sure that we're working on sea level rise and climate change, also things that the governor has talked about. We have a new Office of Sustainability, Equity, and Climate Resistance, Oscar, in the county. So we're working on those issues. Those are pretty much our operational priorities that we're looking at. I'm going to give just a couple of slides here on our general budget. You see that about 1/3 of our budget goes to public safety. Total budget is about $612 million. You can see how that's kind of broken out there. Our general fund revenue, 75% of that actually comes from our taxes, or $462 million. And I'm not going to go into all these. I know that we have some time for questions if you like. But our general expenditures, moving down to that, about 57% of our general expenditures go to salaries and wages. And then another 27% go to operations and equipment. So not a lot of room to wiggle with. When you consider that our CIP budget for capital improvements is $1.6 billion. That's $1.6 billion in current projects. You know, I talked a little bit earlier about converting our cesspools to some other form, whether it be septic tanks or if you're thinking, you know, another wastewater facility. For the District of Puna, just to give you an idea, we have 9 districts. The District of Puna alone will probably cost us over $1 billion. And we're trying to figure out how we're going to do that. Are we going to put those costs on the community? Are we going to take some of those costs? That is a very big nut to crack. But the things that we have now, our wastewater facilities, about $1 billion for the facilities, just for our facilities. Another $400 million for our parks and recreation, and for our public works, the people that take care of our buildings. It's about another $200 million of projects that we have. I could tell people, and you'll understand this because you have the same problem. We generally have a pizza with 12 pieces, but with hundreds of people wanting a piece of pizza. And I know that's exactly what you go through every year. You have all these needs. The pizza is only so big, and so you have to really prioritize where things go. I just want to finish off and again, offer our appreciation for all the support this legislature has given us for the last 3 years with the pandemic, with our recent natural disasters, your assistance with the nonprofits, with helping our residents that you've given us has been tremendous. And we really appreciate the partnerships that you have given us. And on behalf of the people of the County of Hawaii, I just want to say thank you very much. And that's really what I have.
Do you have anyone from your cabinet you want to introduce?
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you for reminding me of that. I have our finance director, Diane Nakagawa, excuse me, and our executive assistant, Cyrus Johnson. Not a big crew with us.
Members, questions? Rep. Morikawa.
Thank you, Mayor Roth. Welcome. I am so happy to hear someone actually start talking about sewer. I know it's a scary thing to start because after hearing what it's going to cost just for one facility, I can see where it's going to be huge for the whole state.
Yes.
Yeah, especially my island. Anyway, so when you said it's like $1 billion just for one sewage treatment plant?
No,
Is that what it is?
so it's probably $1 billion. We have, I think, 9 treatment facilities.
Yes.
I think if we were to fix all of them, that's going to be $1
Oh,
billion.
okay.
But there's several hundred millions just for Hilo.
And that's only for the facility, not so much for the infrastructure that goes to the homes?
It
Is
is
that correct?
partially for the infrastructure
Oh,
that
it
goes
is?
to
Oh, that's
homes.
good to know. Okay.
Yeah.
But we really need to be starting to focus on that conversation because when we talk about expanding housing inventory, you can't do anything without the sewer, the water, and the electricity. So thank you. Thank you for mentioning all of that.
Thank you.
Well, Puna started with all that. Senator Inouye.
Thank you, Chair. Aloha, welcome again this morning to see all of you from Hawai'i Island here. And thank you, I'm going to talk about the sewer, but just to add, thank you so much for taking the lead. It's been over, I was mayor in 1990, 92, and we were already proceeding to do that. Hence, no one did it after. And I congratulate all of you because it's long overdue. But talking about infrastructure, just to add, I'm introducing a bill again, and on behalf of our Hawai'i Island legislators in the Puna District as well, and in Kona, the bill that allows the counties to give you the opportunity to use your gas tax with regards to roads in limbo, as well as those communities.
What is your question?
The question is, are you in support of the counties, in support of using the gas tax bill to improve your roads, because we're having information with regards to emergency vehicles as well? And I think these bills have been around for some time now, but there's been some, I guess, setbacks from counties to allow to use that because, we have communities and you're talking about now escape routes. And so if the county is going to come out and support that measure on behalf of those in the far communities, in the rural communities on our island and the rest of the state as well, because it's going to affect all the counties.
I believe these are funds that we're not already getting for that.
Right.
I'm sure we'll all be supporting that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, helps.
I think our Big Island legislators will be happy.
Rep. Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Mayor, thank you for hosting us when the Finance Committee went and visited the Big Island. You told us this, that, and the other things, and how it was important that you get a D7 or D8 or D9 cat so you could make fire breaks in your otherwise dangerous environment. Did you get it, or is it in your budget? Question.
So what happens, and let me just explain, when there's a brush fire that goes out, there's a call from the fire department to various D9 bulldozer drivers to cut fire breaks. This happens on every island, happened on Maui, happens, and one of the issues that we have is we have a couple of bulldozers, but our island is a big island about the size of Connecticut, so to get a bulldozer, for example, from Kauai to Waikoloa, you may be talking about a couple of hours to get the operators. And so we generally go out to people who are out there, businesses, and ask them to help because we often use several of these. What happens is oftentimes they tell us, oh, we're not going to charge you, or we'll charge you a little bit, and then a big bill comes back. That's very difficult, but we pay because if you don't do it, the consequences are worse. So one of the things we're looking at is how do we make sure that we have some guardrails there so that we're not paying extraordinary amounts of money. Oftentimes FEMA is going to be paying for these things, but we still have to worry about our tax dollars being misused.
So you don't have the D9s?
We have a couple of D9s, but nowhere near enough that, and I don't think it would be feasible for us to have D9s, waiting for everything when we need 10 of them in any one place that it happens. I don't know if that makes sense.
Any questions from the Senate?
Thank you.
Oh, Senator Milwaukee.
Hi, Mayor, thank you. When we visited you, we saw that you had problems also in staffing, healthcare and so forth, and I see one of your initiatives is workforce development, and I'm just wondering what the county efforts are in that regard, because I know that's a big need on the Big Island as well.
Yeah, and I talked a little bit about the partnership in our American Job Center. We have county workers, we have state workers, we have nonprofits that are working together there, trying to help people, retrain people. So there's a lot of efforts there. And I think this is, again, we heard Mayor Blangiardi talking about the problem. There's not very many, well, there's not a lot of people that are applying for the county jobs. And, I think on our island, we have hotels on the west side of the island that could take maybe 100 employees each hotel. It's difficult for us to compete against those hotels. I'll give you an example. In Kona, we need lifeguards. We're always having a hard time hiring lifeguards. We may be able to pay $20. Hotels are stealing lifeguards from each other, and they're getting into these things. They may be paying $30 or $40 an hour. So
Part of the effort, just as we start looking at, and the Senator Dela Cruz has been pushing this, is working with the high schools, interning them, and they want to stay and live at home. So moving that into careers, not only positions, but looking at empty positions and seeing how you can train them up, but at least getting them interested in various areas. So I'm just wondering what you're doing with the DOE and also with the employers.
Right, so, and as you say that, we do internships. We work with Climb High Hawaii, Lead for America, which is an AmeriCorps program as well. So we're actually working in several different arenas trying to do that. We have another program that has mentor-mentee relationships with kids in the STEAM areas, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics as well.
House members, any questions?
Oh, easy.
Your the MQs, did you guys look at the MQs to see if you could reduce anything that had a bachelor's degree that could go down to an AA or a CTE certificate?
I'm glad you're asking that. I actually just recently brought our HR, human resources, together with our finance people together, and had them start looking at the different positions, because every so often we get people who apply for positions and they don't meet the MQs. So I've asked them to look at that
and train within, so you can
train
move up
within.
a
So
ladder.
and we've actually taken like a planner 3 and maybe brought it down to a planner 2 introductory so that we can bring them up as well. So
Yeah, but
yeah,
still, the planner one still may need a bachelor's.
They may, and we're looking at that as well. So there's a couple of different things that we're looking at to see if we can bring people in.
Okay. Okay, no other questions? Okay, recess.
All right, thank you.
Okay, calling the meeting back to order. Now we'll hear from the County of Maui. Good afternoon.
Aloha mai kako, Chair Dela Cruz, Vice Chair Moriwaki, and members of the Senate Committee on Ways and Means. Aloha mai kako to Chair Yamashita and Vice Chair Kitagawa and members of the House Committee on Finance. Mahalo for this opportunity to present testimony before this joint committee at the start of this 2024 legislative session. My name is Rick Bisson. I'm the mayor of Maui. I did used to be the prosecutor of Maui too, but I decided I won't introduce myself as that. But I did want to introduce to you Josiah Nishita, who is our current managing director, and he's also the one who will be leading the Office of Recovery at our office, at the mayor's office. On August 8th, our island and community was and were forever changed by the devastation of the Maui wildfires. And as I reflect back over these past 6 months, I'm so grateful for the continuous outpouring of the support that we've received from across our Pai'aina and indeed the world. From day one, Maui has truly felt the embrace of so many, including each of you and your own communities. I would also like to acknowledge the work of Speaker Saiki and many of you in establishing 6 interim working groups charged with evaluating the needs of Lahaina, specifically related to environment, food, water, and supplies, jobs and businesses, schools, shelters, and wildfire prevention. As we move into the 2024 legislative session, I recognize there will be continued focus on Maui County. With that said, I want to acknowledge that there are many, many important things in Hawaii that are important to all of us. What we bring to you from Maui are things that are urgent. I humbly stand before you today to express my plea for the prioritization of the care for our survivors and ask that we stand in unity until every survivor has a place to call home. Right now, with 5,368 survivors still living in 32 hotels, we are pushing forward with an aggressive housing plan in partnership with private, local, state, and federal partners to return our people to long-term housing where they can begin to heal. We also face the daunting task of rebuilding our beloved Lahaina town. And we will need your continued support in the coming years to ensure this remains in the forefront of requests. This year, our primary and our only appropriation funding request is for West Maui wildfire recovery efforts. This funding is needed for immediate damage assessment and project planning to ensure resilient infrastructure is recovered and rebuilt. Based on the preliminary analysis of the currently reported damage, we are anticipating approximately $1 billion in public assistance recovery costs. Considering FEMA will pay 90% of that cost, we anticipate the county's 10% of that in the year of $95 to $100 million. We're assessing damage to our wastewater collection and treatment systems, our water systems, and our infrastructure needs. We're also supporting state and federal partners with disaster debris removal and the identification, design, and construction of a permanent disposition site. We have been coordinating an expedited building permit process for fire-impacted properties with a focus on residents. We are in the process of drafting numerous amendments to local land use and development codes to assist in speeding the process of rebuilding. We're also moving forward with hazard mitigation efforts, including efforts to improve evacuation routes, watershed protection, and development of wastewater systems to eliminate the use of existing cesspools. Moving forward, we've established our Office of Recovery, which will be tasked with the management of recovery efforts for community planning, economy, health and social services, housing, infrastructure, and natural and cultural resources. As we move into the planning phase of recovery efforts, our community planning team has been working on establishing a public engagement strategy, documenting public sentiment, collecting feedback, and initiating public outreach, all of which will contribute to the drafting of a disaster recovery plan. Recovery efforts will continue to be prioritized as our efforts remain acutely focused on increasing housing inventory, mental health services, debris removal, assessment of utility and infrastructure needs, and community outreach and planning. I'd like to move into our county's capital improvement program projects. The wastewater reclamation facility project continues to move forward as we are in the process of working on permitting and design. We have received $3.5 million for design and have spent roughly $740,000 for the hydrogeological, air, geotechnical, and noise study. We anticipate requesting additional funding for the next phases in fiscal 2026 or 2027. The North-South Collector Road project is in Phase 1A, as design and environmental assessments will continue through 2024. Likewise, we will be seeking additional funding FY 2026. The Honua-Pi'ilani Highway Realignment Project also remains a high priority and anticipated for funding requests in FY 2027. Our general fund revenue regarding real property tax, we're moving into our general fund, check that. Moving into our general fund revenue, Maui County's real property tax revenue has continued to rise since 2012. In support of impacted property owners, we have provided real property tax relief for those who have had their structures destroyed or are unable to occupy their properties. To cover this anticipated loss in revenue, we are prepared to increase real property tax rates. Furthermore, we've established a real property tax exemption for properties that rent their units to wildfire victims for at least a year. This projected revenue loss will be identified soon, and my administration intends to make real property tax rate adjustments to cover this revenue loss. The County of Maui is grateful for the legislature's passage of a county's transient accommodations tax for FY 2023, brought Maui County approximately $80 million. And while our tourism industry has declined due to the wildfires, we anticipate closing the current fiscal year at our budgeted amount of $60 million. In an effort to address our housing crisis, our administration introduced a general excise tax surcharge, which was approved by the Maui County Council on July 19th, 2023, and went into effect this past January 1st. These funds will be utilized for housing infrastructure, including water projects, drainage, sewers, waste disposal, and waste treatment systems. It will also include walking paths and sidewalks on or near a public school. In addition, the council added an amendment to direct 20% of this revenue toward projects that support the Department of Hawaiian Homeland's development and homesteads. Last year, $45 million was allocated for the acquisition of Hawai'i International Institute. The acquisition is intended to provide preschool, early education, teacher, and affordable workforce housing. As you know, the impact of the Maui wildfires has taken insurmountable focus of our attention and our resources. The Hawai'i facility provided critical housing for first responders through a very difficult time. American Red Cross continues to manage their operations as well as house their staff and volunteers out of Hawai'i facility, which has been crucial to emergency and recovery efforts. HHFTC is currently in negotiation to purchase Hawai'i. The County of Maui is in the process of finalizing the memorandum of agreement with HHFTC, and the county remains committed to realizing this vital resource for our community. In closing, I would like to thank you for your continued support. And while the needs of Maui County and the state reach far beyond the impact of the Lahaina wildfires, I must stress the needs of Lahaina are like nothing we have ever experienced before. While the devastation is undeniable, the spirit of our people remains strong, as evidenced by the tremendous turnout, support, and unity displayed this past Saturday in Lahaina, both on land and in the water. With your support, we will rebuild our Lahaina and Kula and return our people home. On behalf of our grateful people, mahalo for your continued support and partnership. And I would be remiss, I have two other staff members that are here. They asked me not to introduce them, which is why I'm going to introduce them now. Lakshmi Abraham is our Director of Legislative Liaison, and Mahina Martin is Director of Communications and Public Affairs.
Thank
Any
you.
questions, I'll be happy
I
to
understand
answer.
you have council members here too.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, we have Councilmember Sugimura, and we did have, we also have former Mayor Victorino is also here, I'd like to acknowledge.
Thank you. Members' questions? Senator Favela.
Hello, Mayor.
Aloha, Senator.
One of the biggest things that I guess we have a problem with right now, it's great that we're going to give them tax breaks on them providing their homes for the people that's needing the homes. The problem I have right now, this is from the families in Lahaina and on Maui, that the regular 3-bedroom home is $8,000 to $10,000 a month. So these guys who are price gouging the rent to our victims and our families because of FEMA or whoever it is, what is the repercussions of them by overpricing the houses way over fair market value? And then we're going to give them an excise tax break for letting them stay in the house when they're charging the houses 10 times the amount of renting the units. And then a lot of the units that is being rented like that on the property, those guys are not living on this island. So how are we going to address that, Mayor?
I agree with you, Senator. Thank you for pointing that out. I guess my first answer to you would be is, number one, we're in an emergency. So there are about 27,000 available units on Maui that are made up by non-owner occupied owners, by timeshares, and by short-term rentals. That's the total count. I think you heard the governor refer to that this morning. He referred to them as short-term rentals, but actually they're made up of those three categories. They're all taxed differently in our county. What we were looking for was a target of about 3,000 of those units. So I proposed the bill, the council, they approved the bill to provide tax relief for those folks. So we set, I guess, that part, the carrot, if you would, to incentivize people to convert their homes from short-term to long-term. The number you're talking about is put forth by our partner, the FEMA, where they have decided on how much they will pay for each of those units. That's not being paid by the state. That's being paid by FEMA. But what it's creating is an artificial number. So basically, we had two rental numbers on Maui, right? The rental that regular working folks paid and the amount of rent that people would pay if they wanted to be in a short-term rental. So to further incentivize them, they were given a number that they had previously charged last year's numbers as their short-term rental, and they were being promised those numbers, which is why I also just came back from Washington, D.C., along with Mayor Roth, having met with several of our partners there, encouraging FEMA to build units for us on Maui. To wait the 4 to 6 months it would have taken to build the homes, we would still have our folks in the hotels. So the idea of converting right away was the quickest way we could think of trying to house people in more livable homes instead of hotel rooms. So that's the reason we went with that plan. But the longer term plan was to create housing by building units that people can move to. I should tell you, there are two types of impacted victims. We have the FEMA eligible and the FEMA ineligible. The people that are ineligible for FEMA assistance are not in those units. The FEMA ineligible are being assisted by Kuhio Lewis and CNHA and other programs that are designed. And what makes you eligible and ineligible, I won't get into all the technical things, is basically is if you had insurance or if you didn't have insurance. So if you had homeowner's insurance, you're supposed to use your homeowner insurance payout to live. That's how you pay your rent, and that's how you get by. Everybody else. But you're absolutely correct. It's going to cause an artificial rise. It already has. They've had some unintended consequences. People whose leases have ended, terminated, and the landowner takes a higher amount, what you refer to as gouging. And I'm not going to say that about everybody, because there's some people that early on just converted their units. So we're not putting everybody in the same bucket, if we can say that. But I think the Attorney General is able to go after people who are illegally violating the emergency proclamation that the governor imposed on either evicting people and or the price gouging. We'll see how that pans out, but that's a very important topic. Thank you.
Representative Kato.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mayor. Well, if you get time, I want to talk story with you offline. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hello. Aloha, mahalo for being here, Mayor, and all your crew. Many questions, but I'll just jump straight to the your priority for CIP. And my number one has been since before I got here is the extension of the Lahaina bypass heading north. So I know it's not on the list here. I guess just what your thoughts are, if any discussion is being had about that, because it's really, the West Maui Hospital is contingent on it, rolling out our DHHL, HHFDC properties, and the school evacuation routes out of all the Kilauea Mauka subdivisions. So just wanted to ask your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I've had some really good discussions with Ed Sniffen about that. I mean, that's going to require a much bigger lift, working with our federal highways and, of course, state highways folks to do that. The county's not capable of doing that. That is on the books, but I would say it's not something that's happening in the near future.
Okay. Thank you. I have others, but thank you.
Thank you.
Chair.
Senator Kidani.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Did I understand you to say that Mayor County was purchasing Hawai'i University?
No, the state of Hawaii, HHFDC.
For what purpose?
Well, there were several things. I can't say I was involved in the original discussions, but there is the original use, I believe, Lieutenant Governor Sylvia Luke was for early education. We also wanted to use it for teacher housing. And there was, I want to say, single moms and their children, but it was basically preschool, early, focusing on early childhood education as a facility, but also for housing, either teachers or single moms.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Rep. Ward.
Thank you, Chair. A chain of command question, sir. Everyone's saying, well, it depends on what Maui wants. Whatever Maui wants, we're going to do it the way they say it. The question is there a decision-making tree or process in place where everybody knows what they're going to do and there's a consensus, particularly about how you're going to rebuild Maui is going to be, Lahaina, or you're going to create a different Lahaina because of other setbacks and other things. The point is there a process in place, and is there actually a consensus? Because everybody's saying, whatever Maui wants, Maui's going to get. Is that actually going to happen?
I guess that remains to be seen, but let me clarify. I think you asked a two-part question. The person who's going to be responsible for this by the end of the day is sitting right next to me. Josiah Nishita, he's heading up the Office of Recovery. When you hear people like myself and others say, we're going to follow the lead of Lahaina, let me share my experience with you. I think if you ask 10 people from Lahaina, you'll get 10 different answers.
Oh, no.
On how Lahaina should look. So what I would say to you is it's too early to tell. We're going to do a lot of public outreach, public engagement. Lahaina was so many things to so many people. It is, right? The monarchy, right? Was it a kingdom of Hawaii? It was a whaling era. There was a plantation era. There's so many different aspects and times in history. So it's not easy to capture just one. And some people say, oh, it should be like how it was during the plantation days, or it should be how it was during the tourist days. Lahaina Front Street, how that's going to look. What we have to do is, like all the things you folks do is what we have to do. We have to balance the needs and the interests of everyone involved. Because, when you talk to the Chamber of Commerce and, Front Street being so vibrant for our economy, and then you get folks who maybe want to consider what Moku'ula or Mokuhina was like in those days, right? And then so many sacred areas, so many historical areas, and I mean of all ethnicities. It's difficult to give you an answer that it's going to look this certain way. And then you brought up the issue of shoreline, setback, ocean rise, climate change, the issues of zoning, building codes, the width of the streets, things that come into health and safety, the building materials that were used. All of those things are going to be put into the mix, which is why this is going to be quite a challenge. I don't want to pretend to speak for people who come from Lahaina, but the last thing I'll say on that is these are properties that are privately owned as well. I mean, there are pieces there that are owned by the state and the county and the Weinbergs and all other businesses, but I'm not the person who's going to tell you what it's going to look like today, but that is what we're striving on. I'll let Josiah finish that.
Thank you, Mayor. Aloha, members. I'll just get to your part of the question about the decision-making structure. And we'd be happy to provide the committees further information and documentation on this. We do have it available online as well on mauirecovers.org, where you can find the actual organizational structure that we have in place, which follows the National Disaster Recovery Framework. So within our offices, we have established recovery support functions that's also modeled at the state and federal level. They'll have counterparts in between, and we work together to move the priorities forward. We are embarking on community engagement process, which is a more formal process to establish a long-term recovery plan. And as a part of that long-term recovery plan, We have already established through understanding the public sentiment analysis and other information that we've received from the community, an initial set of what we call a recovery needs assessment. So that's identifying what the community is telling us is needed from them, how they would like to see things redone or rebuilt, priority areas for the community. And what we do with that assessment, which we can provide to the committee as well, is we'll continue to refine that with the community and establish specific projects and strategies to implement those goals. And the community will help us dictate how to prioritize those things. So based on funding, based on timelines, how it impacts residents returning to their properties, they'll be able to help make those decisions. And we'd be happy to provide further information to the committees.
You have a tough job, but we're hoping you'll give us clarity. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Senator DeQuaid. Click it up.
Might be working. It sounds like it's on.
Hi, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mayor, for being here. As we know, we have struggles all across of Maui, upcountry and Lahaina. And as you represent Maui Nui, I guess the question becomes, as you sit here, you're prepared to increase real property tax rates. What kind of property tax rates of increase will we be looking at across Maui Nui?
The first piece we were referring to is the second part of that bill that the council granted, which was to give tax relief to those 3,000 or so units that convert from short-term to long-term. If you remember the numbers, the other 24,000 who didn't participate in that is the group we were planning to increase taxes on. Now, the reason we don't have those numbers for you today is timeshares, short-term rentals, and non-owner occupied homes are taxed at different rates right now. Approximately $5, $8, and $11, the ranges between those three. So depending on how many from what category convert will tell us what our revenue loss is. Once we determine our revenue loss, then we're able to decide on a tax increase for each of those categories, I guess commensurate to our needs. We're not trying to tax for more than what our losses are. So that's why we don't have the exact numbers, because we don't know what our loss is yet.
And then quick, just a follow-up. So as you guys are coordinating an expedited building permit process for fire impacted properties with the focus on residents, what kind of measures are you taking to expedite that permitting process?
I'll let Josiah explain that piece, but one of the things we're doing, we're having the same struggles everybody else is having throughout the state, which is to finding employees. I mean, we have a shortage right now, and I know that's an excuse given sometimes as to why we're not timely on our permitting. But one of the things we intend to do is go outside of the county and hire a private contractor, but talk about that.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, we're looking at expedited permitting process for the Lahaina disaster impact area. So all properties within that location, but roughly 2,000 acres. We're focusing in on primarily, actually solely the residential structures on the expedited permitting process. I believe we anticipate about 1,200 properties would qualify for the expedited permitting process. And we did issue an RFP to secure a firm to assist us with expediting reviews. And our staff is working through the process on how that would work. They are currently interviewing proposed vendors. We hope a selection will be made by February 16th with a permitting office opened in Lahaina by the end of March to start receiving applications for residential rebuild in Lahaina.
Thank you, Chair.
Rep. Moikal.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much for being here. Your GET is going to go into effect this year, right? January this year?
Yes, it did.
Yeah. So do you have an estimate about how much that would bring in a year? Because your list is very ambitious. I see a lot of infrastructure.
Thank you very much. For the general excise tax for January to June of this fiscal year, our anticipation was about $20 million of collections. With the council's provision of 20% going to DHHL, who we've been working with on how to allocate that funding. That's about $4 million to DHHL, and then the remaining $16 million to the County of Maui for infrastructure related projects that would help in assistance of development of housing. We have a number of, I guess, projects on the horizon. The projects that we submitted to council, which they're going to be taking up soon for that appropriation. Two are wastewater projects in Lahaina, and one is a water treatment project upcountry. Thank you.
Okay, that's good to hear. It's just, I'm worried because it goes away in 2030, I believe. So, it's good to know how this is gonna help counties going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions from the Senate? Okay, anyone from the House? Rep. Cochran.
Thank you, and mahalo, Josiah, and you've been very instrumental in a lot of ways. I just wanted to, I actually don't have a question, Chair, if you don't mind, but I have a suggestion. There was a TIG, I think a few of you in the room from the past remember the temporary investigative group that created inventory, how to garner inventory for affordable, for housing. And it was done in August and September of 2016. And in it has many, many solutions that county can jump on. And one of the lands are in Maui Lani, which I know former Mayor Victorino had addressed, the dorms at MCC. So there's others that will really share some answers to the efforts you're trying to move forward. So I'm just putting that out there to take a look at, because it really could be helpful.
You're referring to the 34 lots? Actually, there's a total of 50 lots in Maui Lani.
That was just one of the low-hanging fruit, per
Yeah, we
se.
are using those lots. CNHA and HCF, we're assisting. We've already in the process of selecting the units that are going to go on there. So we're going to try to fit, for the 17 lots, we're trying to put 34 ADUs on each of those. So a total of 2 on each lot, totaling 34. There's another 17 lots that we committed to another organization. Is it House Maui? Yeah, Nahaleo Maui. And we're trying to see if we can get those back from them to use them also for another 34 units. So we're in the process of trying to stand up 68 units there very shortly.
Okay, great. But yeah, that report would really be helpful at this time. Thank you so much for your time and efforts coming here.
Mahalo. Thank you,
Senator
Representative
Ducoit.
Thank you, Mayor. Stated the housing of the 5,300 survivors still living in 32 hotels continues to be a big obstacle to enable them to heal. Do you see any opportunities where the state can give you additional help to cut that number down?
Well, I mean, yes, but let me just start with saying the struggle, I think, is that we are all going after the same inventory. Whether it's the county, the state, the federal government, there's no like separate pot available to one, unavailable to the others. We're all seeking the same units that are currently sitting vacant, like a short-term rental just sitting there. We're asking, can we use that unit? So the difference between the three of our agencies is that the feds can offer the most money for that unit. And so people are converting. I wouldn't know exactly how else we can do this, except part of what the state is doing is occupying, trying to acquire, I should say, not occupying, acquiring some properties that are available to put up temporary units as well, modular homes. I know DHS is working on a property on West Maui in the Launiopoko area. We're doing the same thing, trying to get FEMA to build in some parts of West Maui too. What we know is that about 80% of the people that are still in the hotels are insisting on staying in Lahaina or on West Maui. And that's an additional obstacle, if that's the word, because we may have some units available in Kihei or upcountry or somewhere else. But again, we're trying to focus on on that. You know, their students, their children go to Lahaina schools, they work in Lahaina hotels. I mean, there are reasons why people have that strong connection, like all of us have, to our communities. So I don't think it's an unreasonable request. It's just that, again, we're dealing with the same inventory struggles. Once we can start to build units and provide more options, we think that will relieve a lot of pressure. And you know, we've already started clearing the debris. The debris started on the 16th, Army Corps. We completed the 25 lots in Kula ahead of schedule. And then now we're working on the residential units and lots out in Lahaina. So that's already started. So the quicker we can do all this, the quicker we can make that area safe, as well as trying to get people back home.
And so, Mayor, is there anything else we could do to help speed up with the debris removal?
Well, our next step is engaging the community in the permanent site. You know, we identified 8 locations initially for the temporary and or the permanent sites. There was a list of criteria that went through, and they were ranked, not by myself, but by professionals, and there were decisions made about that. And then, of course, the community has also given their input about where they would like to see it and where they don't want to see it. And so we've made some decisions with the council. So for example, Olowalu, which is the current temporary site that was approved by the council just last week, that's a goal, but it will not be the permanent site. And we're considering some of the other locations. And again, lessons learned from that was to engage the community earlier to try to get their voices heard. And at the end of the day, we'll make the call. But at least everyone will have a chance to tell us what their thoughts are.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
Rep. Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mayor, a question probably born in frustration. When are we going to know what the cause is and what the lessons learned are from the Maui fires? Do you have anything to update us on that?
Well, I know that the Attorney General's team has been to Maui many times. They've already interviewed me. I don't know, they've interviewed maybe 200 or 300 of our county personnel, first responders. Yeah, I mean, there's an ongoing active investigation that they are conducting. I know there are several others being conducted around. It's not being conducted by the county
Any
itself.
timeline when we can see cessation?
I would have to refer you to the Attorney General for that question, for that
Thank
answer.
you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Senator Milwaukee.
Aloha, Mayor. Thank you
Aloha.
for being here. I know that you've mentioned the many diverse voices, communities about the new Lahaina. I'm just wondering, do you have a plan for the plan? And what can you put together, or have you put together what that plan should look like to include all those voices?
You know, one of the things that we're not short of is input from people both within and outside of Maui. So many people have sent us their plans that they have drawn up. So obviously people have given this a lot of thought. We have our own consultants that we're working with. And again, our plan is to engage our community and see where we can find agreement, consensus, some ideas. But I think it's too early to tell now exactly how that's going to be decided. But Josiah, do you want to add to that?
Thank you. And it may be more detailed than what the committees at this time want, but we'd obviously be happy to share further information at later hearings if that's what's needed. But we, do follow the guidance that's based off of what a significant amount of other communities, unfortunately, have gone through this in the past. And through their lessons learned, through the ways that they've learned to work with the community, as well as federal resources and federal funding that's available, we're modeling our planning activities off of that, based off of our recovery support function dealing with community planning efforts. And, given all the challenges that's facing, the hardest thing in all of this is probably going to be the community planning element. just getting people together and to come to a common ground and common vision for how that should take place will be one of the biggest challenges.
You're building for people, so I think, in terms of knowing what that framework is, would be very, very helpful, I think, in how you plan for the future.
Thank you. And chairs, we'd be happy to, I couldn't print out enough materials for everybody to bring with me on the plane, but I can provide staff some of the materials we have to provide to committee members at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And following up on that line, one of your bullet points talks about a community planning team. And who would that be? What's the makeup of that community planning team?
Yeah, so our recovery support function of the community planning element is that team that will lead the long-term recovery plan and engagement efforts. Those members are primarily made up of our teams within our Department of Planning, who lead long-range plans. As you can imagine, like the West Maui Community Plan or other community plans from your own communities are developed. Those key members of those groups will help to lead and guide that effort. And we have other resources as well, including our communications team and other resources from other departments to help lead that effort.
Senator Kim.
Thank you, Mayor. Today in the governor's message, he said that if in fact the units are not enough units come onto the market with his plan to get the visitor, what is that, the
Short-term rentals.
short-term rentals on board, that he would in fact invoke a moratorium. So do we know at what point that would happen? Do you folks have an idea as to, what would trigger that moratorium?
Well, I can give you a couple of dates that we're working off of. So January 31st is the deadline, the first deadline that we've imposed for short-term renter landlords to convert to long-term. And the way we know they're doing that is that they apply for an exemption at the real property tax at the county. So we have real numbers, and the only way you can apply for the exemption is you have to show the lease. You have to show the 1 year or longer a rental agreement. So we know we've been collecting those from the county side. The second deadline we gave is March. So if you sign up by January 31st, you receive an 18-month property tax relief. If you sign up in March, you get a 12-month tax relief. So I think those would be the two dates that will give us the best indicator of whether we've gotten the 2,700 or 3,000 units that we're looking for. So I don't think we'll have anything from the governor before then, because these are the dates we gave people to convert by. So I think my guess would be March.
Okay, so if in March we're still short,
Yes.
it'll get triggered right away, or what's the plan?
I've
And
not
then,
discussed that specifics with the governor. He's expressed, obviously, we've talked about what it would be like for him to put that in. I think the length, the two things I will say that I did get from him on what the moratorium would look like is it would be the length of the emergency proclamation that he puts in, so perhaps 90 days. It would end once the number of units have, we receive them. I know those are two sort of things that he shared with me.
okay, well, it'd help to get more details, like what happens if they come in after the March? What kind of tax waivers would they get compared to those that have come in earlier before the moratorium?
I think the other question too, if I can add to that, and questions we're getting from the public is, what if I put my unit in and I live in Hana, and I put my unit in, but nobody wanted to accept my unit because nobody wants to go necessarily maybe to Hana, I'm using that example, to Hana. So I think there are gonna be things that we're also gonna have to take into account, either one-offs or just categories. And that's a really good point. We will look into all of that.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question. How long is FEMA obligated to be here to assist? Is there a cutoff deadline?
18 months. 18 months is their obligation to provide emergency housing. It can be extended to 24 months. And then, of course, if the president says longer, but that's their 18 to 24 months is what I can tell you, Senator.
And that was the started back in August?
Okay, so it starts when the president makes the emergency declaration. That's one of the triggering dates. The other we're talking about now is the length of the lease, when the lease started, because everybody's lease is starting on a different date. So whether or not they lock in an 18-month or a 12-month lease, based on that, I can get clarification for you.
Okay, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is lots of money right now is going to help with rentals.
Yes, sir.
And if they have a deadline of when they're gonna assist us and leave, if we don't seem to get the rental costs down, that's less money for housing and construction long-term.
Which is exactly why we have been asking FEMA to build the units so that we can put people into units. Because the units they build, let's say they build a modular home, the person that can live in there beyond 18 months, beyond 24 months. It's just no longer FEMA's responsibility. And that's where both the state and the county have agreed to work together and take over those long-term units. We need FEMA's help in putting in the infrastructure and building the units now, and that's really what we're negotiating.
Okay, so some temporary, I know there've been efforts or discussions on rent control. So if we were to bring the cost of the rent down, that would also free up more money for
We would support
construction.
that. We would support that. Rent control, I think you'd get support probably throughout the entire state.
Okay, because when the Ways and Means Committee went over to
Yes.
Lahaina, that was one of the 2 items that they asked us to consider introducing on their behalf.
Yeah, as I was trying to explain earlier to Senator Favela, the struggle was, what do we do today? How do we get people in there today? And then how do we plan for the 19th month when FEMA pulls out?
Yeah.
That's definitely what's on our mind.
And if the money gets wrapped up in high rentals,
Yes.
there's less money going to construction and infrastructure.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Wait. Any House members? Senator Kidani.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to know if you guys have extended or asked our congressional delegation to jump in at this time to ask for that extension from Congress, from the president, only because when we were there, the WAM was there visiting, we did see one of our congressional delegation there looking, so I know they're aware of what's happening, but I think if you wait till the end of the line to ask for that assistance, there's going to be some time in between getting that assistance to extend for FEMA.
Thank you, Senator. Your instincts are very on point. We are already with our congressional delegation. They are already assisting. They've been really from the beginning. I met with 3 of them in their offices last week in Washington, D.C. That's part of the reason for being there. They have heard my plea asking FEMA to build these units for us. I met with FEMA, I met with HUD, I met with different members of the President's cabinet while I was there to bring our plea to them. But we have consensus and unity among all 4 of our congressional delegates, and they are very aware. I also put this in writing. I wrote a letter to FEMA making this request as well, copies of which have been distributed to our federal partners, and I'm happy to distribute it to anybody in the committee who's interested in seeing the action we've taken so far.
Thank you.
But I would still think you need to plan for worst-case scenario. So if it's not extended, what's the tipping point where there's a budget for infrastructure and housing? If you don't get people off rentals, the budget is going to stay the same, right? You still got to do infrastructure, you still got to build housing. Now, at that point, FEMA's leaving, the state and the county is going to have to pick up the bill.
You're correct. Also, there's philanthropy. There are nonprofit, there are private entities that we're also going to try to engage in building as well. So we understand we need to build. Just a second.
Well, I just want to make sure that what do we have to do so that we can conserve money and be smart about the rental assistance and lowering those costs so that we can put more money in the infrastructure so that FEMA can take care of most of those costs, and then whatever assistance is needed from the state and the county is not as prolonged as if we only focus on rentals.
Thank you. So a lot of our funding for infrastructure repairs and replacement is going to come through our public assistance process. And so, the process of clearing all the properties as quickly as possible, as well as getting an expedited permitting process in place, will get people out of the rental pool and back into their properties. About 40% of property owners, of properties were occupied by the owner in the disaster impact area, and about 60% of the properties were rentals. So we are having to look at additional builds to accommodate the individuals who did not own the current property. And I would just indicate too that as a separate funding source to meeting the housing unmet needs is our CDBG DR assistance too, that we have asked for approximately $1.2 billion from HUD to help meet the unmet need gap, specifically related to housing and some other efforts. Thank you.
I'm still trying to figure out, in your timeline though, what tools do we need to minimize the costs for rentals, still provide the rentals, but because we can lower the rents through some type of cap? What's the timing? How much do you need for infrastructure and housing? And then we can limit, we got to know what the budget is in the short term so we can figure out what the state's obligation is in the long term.
Thank you. Yeah, our primary focus, like we're not banking on extensions being granted. Of course, that's our hope, and if the need is there, then we would definitely push for that to occur, but we have to plan for our residents as if that's not occurring. And so the projects that we put in place, including on county-owned lands, we're working with a few different entities right now for development of projects on those lands, in addition to, as Mayor mentioned, group housing sites so that we have adequate inventory to house the displaced survivors at a low cost or affordable rent.
Okay, because the mayor's testimony, they're looking at $1 billion in public assistance and recovery costs. I'm not sure if that also includes the infrastructure and the housing, or is that just, what's included in that $1 billion?
Thank you. That $1 billion is primarily inclusive of infrastructure-related repairs and replacement. Obviously, damage assessments are still ongoing, and the actual need will vary at the end of the day. But our initial estimates for primarily infrastructure repairs and replacements is going to come out to roughly that amount.
Okay, so what's the timeline where we have to start with the processing, the plan, design, construction, so what encumbering funds, whatever, so that FEMA ends up footing the bill versus the county or the state?
Yeah, so time is our biggest enemy right now. More than money, more than anything else, it's the elapsing of time. And so the cost share between the feds and the state and or county decreases over time. And so the processes and projects that we're putting in place now is to get those things started as soon as possible so that we can have those federal resources at play. Our whole goal is to not have to tap into our residents' pocketbooks as much as possible. And so to utilize our private philanthropy partners as well as our federal resources is our top goal.
No, so I hear a process from you. What I'm not getting are dates, specific dates. And if you need to extend, you're going to extend. But what's the specific dates to say, okay, we're going to start construction on some of these projects so that FEMA actually foots the bill?
Yeah, for FEMA's group housing sites, they're looking at about 4 to 6 months, I believe, once final approval is given from their top headquarters. We have been working with our federal delegation to put pressure on FEMA to move those projects forward. We have been lining up the infrastructure resources. Of course, you guys are well aware that sewer capacity, water availability of resources is huge issues. But we've been lining up those plans in place so that once FEMA's ready to and able to pull the trigger, then those projects could be built in about 4 to 6 months. We also have an ADU and TDU program that will be getting off the ground shortly, which we hope will be able to fill the gap of especially the FEMA ineligible individuals. And that program should take about 4 to 6 months to get units going through the pipeline.
Okay, if you can just give us a breakdown of the 1 billion, and then timing as to what projects are going to start, and I'm assuming that they don't have to be finished right away for FEMA to pay for them.
Thank you. Yeah, we'd be happy to submit you some Gantt charts that we have regarding timelines of infrastructure and whatnot, as well as the breakdown of funding resources.
So the paragraph before says this is your only request, right, is funding for the recovery efforts. Is that the 95 million in the second paragraph? Because it says counties 10% of the approximate 95 million.
Yeah, so we will work with the state on this. I think generally in other communities, the state does cover through a 75-25 match the local jurisdiction's coverage of the PA assistance requirements. And there's also additional needs. Obviously, damage assessments are still ongoing, and needs such as childcare, healthcare, mental health resources and whatnot are not included in infrastructure improvements. And so there may be additional funding resources needed that we'll continue to work with the state on, and we'll be able to provide further details at a later point.
Okay, well, bill introduction is due Wednesday. So I mean, what's your plan on how to communicate that to the ledge and using which vehicles?
Thank you, Chair. Well, we will work with our ledge team to make sure we get you the information that you need by your deadlines.
Okay, so the 95 million, that's what you're saying, 75% would be the state and 25% of that would be county?
Generally, I believe that's my understanding of how many other jurisdictions have handled that reimbursement process.
Okay, so provided, let's say the number, for sake of discussion, I know you said that that's a soft number right now, the 1 billion. So if we were to just assume we're going to stay at that number, the only thing that you're asking the state to do is provide 75 million.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm going to have Acid from our consultant Tetra Tech, who's assisting us with all the federal funding resources, help to answer the question.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity of speaking to you. So breaking down the $95 million, I think your question is a great question, but what you're looking at a very logical process where your question is. What we're looking at is a federal processes, which is a little different.
Federal non-logic.
Well, there's very little logic in the federal process, right? So the $95 million breakdown, it's basically, we're looking at 3 different aspects, right? We're looking at your emergency, which is category B damages. And so part of the 95 million is based out of that. Second is we're looking at your permanent work, which is category C through G. So that's a large chunk of it. And the last part is latent damages that are not visible to you now, but they will be over time. So that's where the $95 million allocation comes through. So what the federal, sorry.
Is that 95 what he was saying? 25% going to be covered by the county, 75% you hope to be covered by the state?
So our hope is that it's going to be a 90-10, 90% to 10%. What it is the federal government is going to cover 90%, and the local share is the 95 million.
Yeah.
So what happens is within the 95 million, what Joyce was saying is usually what the states do is they take 75% of the burden and then have the local community take the 25% of the burden of that 95 million. So that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I'm just trying to figure out.
Yeah.
So the county's ask is 75% of the 10%.
75% of the 10%. So 75% of the 95%, which is the 10%. That's correct.
Okay, so right now the soft number is 1 billion. So if it stays there, the county ask for the state to cover is
the local share. That's correct. 75%
of the 95 million.
That's correct. Yeah.
And that's the only request the county has this session.
Well, I'm going to defer that answer to Joseph.
That's what it's primary and only.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yes, for this session, yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Mayor.
Yes,
so, in your, discussions with the federal people, have you started discussions about the possibility or the authorization to access Liberty bonds?
I have not.
Okay. So Liberty bonds were used in the 9/11 disaster, and it is a federal resource that can supplement private activity bonds to do gap funding and different things to beyond what FEMA is doing to rebuild the community. But it takes the federal government to give us that authorization. BNF is already aware of it, and I'm sure that in my conversations with them, they are pursuing that. That should have been in the ESF 16 meeting that I think you guys attend. So, but I think from your side, it needs to be pushed also because the federal government has to give us that authority.
We will look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you, Rep.
Any other questions? Senator Favela.
The question is I have, you guys keep saying FEMA. When we went to Maui, FEMA was clear to us that they take the becking calls and the instructions from the governor. So are we having two FEMAs? Because you guys are talking about a FEMA seems to be independent from the state of Hawaii. And then when I talked to the guy from FEMA, he said he only takes his marching orders from the governor. So that's why I'm kind of confused, because you're the mayor of the county, and regardless if FEMA there and the governor, you control everything to do it in the county. So if I wanted to sell or wanted to do something, they'd have to go through the county. So I just kind of confused that we're waiting for FEMA, and then FEMA telling us the governor giving him the orders. So who are we waiting for? The governor, FEMA, or you? Because you're the mayor. So that's kind of confusing, because you guys been talking about FEMA this whole time. And that's the reason why I was upset, Mayor, with the FEMA guy there and my colleagues was like there, because I asked him that question. And he said, the governor, he goes to the governor for backing off. So I said, the governor knows, and you know that they're outpricing the people. And he shrugged me, just like that. So I don't know what you can do besides what we're going to try to do here legislatively, Mayor. But you're the mayor. You can make your own rules. You can make your own thing with your council and your people and your laws to tell those people they cannot do that. Even though FEMA's saying they're going to pay that cost, but you can say, you're the mayor. You do that, you'll be penalized. Because if I wanted to sell one bag ice for $160 during this crisis,
Question.
who's going to shut down? Would you guys shut me down? Mayor?
Yes.
Okay.
So.
That's the question then.
But to answer your question, we're dealing with FEMA. I cannot answer how FEMA is dealing with the state because the state and them, they have their own relationship. The one I have with them has been cooperative and has been helping us. But we did point out that artificial increase, as you pointed out, what's happening to our rents. And one of the ways we want to address that is getting them to build units. And if we can get them to build units, we can move people out of short-term rentals and adjust that price. If there's rent control, if there are other issues preventing evictions. I mean, I guess the best I can answer is there's really no one approach, one answer. This is a very complex thing that we've come to understand, and there are multiple approaches, there are multiple ways to try to get what we're getting at. And right now, all we want is a simple thing, is to get people back to their homes. I mean, no matter how we slice this and how we say it, at the end of the day, that's the simple message. We want to get people back to their homes. We don't want people to sell their land. We don't want people to move away. We don't want people to be taken advantage of. We don't want any of that. And we're doing our best to deal with all the agencies that we deal with every single day to try to achieve that. And there is going to be time where there's disagreement, inconsistencies, contradictions, things that come up. And our job as leaders is to deal with that. Find out what happened, how it went wrong, human error, process error. You know, have we missed something? I'm sure we missed stuff. I'm sure of that, but not on purpose. We're just trying to do the best we can.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we're going to call a 5-minute recess so that Kauai can set up. They already pushed back their flights once, so thank you.
Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
can blame Honolulu.
Okay, calling back to order. Now we have the County of Kauai.
Hi, good
Aloha.
afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I'm Reiko Matsuyama, Managing Director for the County of Kauai. I also have with me Chief of Staff Sarah Blaine and my predecessor, your friend and mine, Mike Dahili, sitting in the back over there.
He's next.
He can answer all your questions. So thank you for the opportunity to present testimony before this joint committee. Mayor Kawakami sends his regrets as he's still on his way back from the U.S. Conference of Mayors. You know, as we stand here today, we would be remiss to not mention the devastation in Lahaina. Kauai remembers how the state and all the other counties came together to assist us in our times of disaster, whether it be Hurricane Iniki or the 2018 floods that cut off access to a large population of our island. Hawaii stood together. It will be no surprise to any of you that our real property taxes continue to be our primary source of general fund revenue. Real property tax revenue remains strong as we continue to see unbroken growth since 2013. We are estimating a moderate increase of 5% in our values for fiscal year 2025, putting us in a position to maintain stable revenue collection this upcoming budget. After some significant real property tax reform this year, we are excited to be implementing tiers to our real property tax rates in this upcoming budget. The County Council has granted us the ability to tier all 9 of our remaining tax classes, helping to distribute the burden of real property taxes more fairly across our county. This will introduce progressivity to our tax system, whereby more valuable properties pay a higher proportion of their property's value in taxes. While our intentions are to roll out these changes slowly to get our taxpayers accustomed to the new structure, this will allow us greater revenue generation. This reform also included some name changes to our tax classes, which will reduce confusion, as well as we eliminated our residential investor tax class. General excise tax. The GET surcharge has helped us stimulate job growth, expedited improvement initiatives, and completely eliminated our need for additional general obligation bonds. While we took advantage of low interest rates by refinancing in 2021, our last GO bond issuance was in 2017, prior to Mayor Kawakami's tenure. We are grateful to the legislature for assisting us with the avoidance of this debt service that would be carried by our taxpayers for many years. In the years immediately before GET, only $1 to $2 million could be invested per year toward the county's approximately 616 lane miles of road. Only minor patching or filling could be done with any regularity. And paving had to be addressed in a triage fashion, reserved for short stretches of road at most. As a tangible statistic, since the implementation of GET, we have paved over 176 lane miles under the island-wide resurfacing program. We aren't talking about merely patching potholes. We are now making significant improvements by shaving it down and building it back up. Since subdivision roads generally need to be resurfaced every 20 years and busier roads every 10 years, the resources provided by GET has allowed the county to emerge from a state of being unable to keep pace with the normal rate of road deterioration to being able to catch up, especially with respect to roads that have been in poor to critical condition. More importantly, going forward, the continued access of GET funds will allow the county to progress beyond simply keeping pace with wear and tear to achieving a state of continuous improvement. With critical deficiencies addressed, mill and fill treatments could then be the norm, with the mission of shifting to maintaining good roads and enhancing roads in fair condition, as opposed to repairing only the worst roads. We are further grateful for the legislature's support for our own TAT, the Transient Accommodations Tax. Since inception in October 2021, we have consistently been able to generate more revenue than we did under the state's capped distribution. The TAT is crucial to our ability to support the infrastructure for not only our residents, but our visitors, who make up 30% of our daily population. With the assistance of our influx of TAT in fiscal 24, we increased and filled all of our park ranger positions, and we authorized 12 new positions for our ocean safety coverage. Kauai is further prioritizing the implementation of our Kauai Destination Management Action Plan, particularly in the areas of clean ground transportation, tackling illegal TVRs, funding safety and security staff, and supporting locally made products and land stewardship initiatives. So all of the partners are coming together to create a visitor industry that we can be proud of well into the future. As for our expenses, salaries and related benefits use up over 81% of our general fund expenditures. This leaves little room for programs that benefit our residents. Speaking of salaries, we are still in a state of the unknown as it relates to the issue of temporary hazard pay. The total payout is expected to be significant and be funded by our rainy day funds. Mayor Kawakami has prioritized deferred maintenance for larger infrastructure projects, which have been needed for many years. But as we move towards the end of his term, we need to prioritize expanding our existing landfill capacity, building a new landfill, and expanding our wastewater infrastructure. These things will require a bond issuance in the coming years. And as indicated in the other chart, over half of our general fund expenditures are used towards public safety, police, fire, and emergency management. While our general fund revenue greatly exceeded general fund expenses, much of that is used to support our other enterprise funds that don't generate enough revenue to support themselves. Solid waste, wastewater, and golf course are three of those that receive significant general fund subsidies. Of note, we have passed county legislation to increase both sewer fees and golf course green fees. As an example of the many wastewater fees that were increased, residential flat sewer fees will go from $60.09 per month to $101 per month, an increase of 68% over the next 5 years. These increases should reduce the fund's reliance on our general fund and shows that the county is willing to make difficult decisions to increase taxes and fees that we control. Housing, on the top of everybody's mind, the county is the largest developer of housing on the island. In 2023, we broke ground on 221 new units and secured entitlements and financing for another 276. This includes our second supportive housing project for homeless families at Limaola in Ele'ele. This is set to open in the spring of 2024. These 2023-2024 housing projects represent over $270 million in investment in Kauai's economy. So we also continue to pursue land acquisitions, complete all pre-development and entitlement work, and focus on community engagement. We have dedicated 36 acres in Waimea. We recently closed on 50 acres in Kilauea, and we're pursuing the conversion of an underutilized park in Puhi all to housing. In our fiscal year 24 budget, we funded a debt repayment of $12 million for a DERF loan to free up even more money for future housing projects. The debt was paid off 10 years in advance and saved the county $6.4 million in debt service. The success of our supportive housing concept is contingent on wraparound services that have been previously funded through the Ohana Zone program. This preventative type of funding results in decreased healthcare costs and judicial interventions. We understand this program is currently set to sunset and would request that the state again consider extending or deleting this provision to support our long-term operational success of these programs. So in closing, we recognize there is much uncertainty with the Lahaina recovery, and we commit to helping and working together where we can. We also acknowledge there is much to learn from this disaster and are committed to buffering our disaster preparedness and recovery plans. We have been awarded funds as part of the USDA's Community Wildfire Defense Grant Program to update the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, and simultaneously working on the Climate Adaptation and Action Plan that outlines strategies to both mitigate and adapt to the effects of climate change. In this work on Kauai and across the state, it is essential we collaborate across stakeholders, like we have done so many times before. We must ensure the meeting of the minds and develop creative, thoughtful, and proactive plans and solutions. Throughout Maui's immediate recovery and in the wake of the state's largest environmental, social, and economic disaster, we must emphasize that we feel an obligation to make sacrifices for the good of the whole and recognize that there is a long road ahead. We are with you. Thank you for the opportunity to present these comments, and we look forward to working with you in the upcoming legislative session and the year ahead.
Thank you for waiting. Any questions? If not, I'll go ahead.
May I have the floor, please? Thank you. They saved the best for last. Thanks for waiting. I hope you'll make your flight this
You
afternoon.
know what, though, they already committed to paving all the pickleball courts for you.
Oh, that's probably my first question. Will you guys guarantee to match the 50-50 if we help you guys with your beautiful, terrible tennis courts?
Which tennis courts?
Well, my district, Keikaha, Hanapepe, Lihui, terrible, but that's not my district. But we're willing to help you guys because we know it's such a popular sport.
Okay.
And we'd like to try to help you if you would commit to the match.
Yep, I think we could commit to the match.
Thank you. Thank you. But anyway, let me go back to.
Wait, how much is the match?
No, Chair. Honestly, it's not that much. It's not that much. Thank you. How much GET are you guys bringing in a year?
For fiscal '23, we're looking at about 35 million.
That's good, right? Yeah, because you used to get TAT of 15 million.
Yes.
And then now you're getting 29 million of the
29
TAT.
was fiscal '23.
Right,
Yeah.
and
So
then
almost
35
double.
of GET, so you're doing really well. So I like seeing that you're planning to do more sewer expansion. However, there's no timeline or anything, and I know you're raising the rates, but you're raising the rates on the same people because you haven't expanded the sewer systems, right?
Yep.
So that's going to be a hardship for a lot of people. Also, my question will be coming up right now. You're raising the property taxes according to the value of the property. But if you have an old couple in the middle and you've got really big houses around and in that subdivision, their value goes up, right? So that means their taxes will go up?
It depends on if they're owner occupied. If they're owner occupied, then we do have the 3% assessment cap. So even if the houses surrounding them are appreciating, they are capped by 3%. So their value can only go up by 3%. In last year's budget, we actually did reduce rates for them, so.
Okay, no, that's good to hear, because that's, I really feel for these people who really don't have much income, and you know how the value, the land on Kauai is so valuable. My last question is on the sewer system. I would have hoped that in the 1980s, Kauai did a really good job of getting sewer hookups in Waimea, Hanapepe, but it stopped since then, and the Waimea treatment plant probably has the ability to accommodate more use because it was recently renovated. Does the county have any plans to hook up at least Keikaha because it's really low-lying areas next to the ocean?
We have discussed it. It is not in our, well, it's clearly not in our current budget. We can discuss it again for our upcoming budget. I think what we do have surrounding the Waimea treatment plant is we do have space for expansion. So that will assist in getting more users potentially on the Waimea system.
Right, and I just want to put a plug in for Keikaha, the existing homes, because I know you plan to put more homes up, and in order to do that, you need to have your sewage in, right, your sewage system in. Thank you, Reiko. That's all I have.
Okay, after 20 questions, anybody else got questions? Okay, if not, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Adjourn.
Sorry.